Welcome to Subtext Discourse, a podcast taking you behind the scenes of the art world with the unique individuals involved in this famously opaque field. My name's Michael Dooney, Director of GUYE Gallery and host of the show. In today's episode, I'm speaking with gallery owner and art dealer Christophe Guye. I first met Christopher and became aware of his gallery at Photo London in 2016 when he was presenting new work from British photographer Stephen Gill, juxtaposed with pieces from Japanese photographers Rinko Kawuchi and Risaku Suzuki, among others. I took the opportunity to catch up with Christopher last July when I was in Zurich for a few days. We spoke about his journey from marketing executive to gallery director, what it was like opening a gallery in Los Angeles, how it compared to running his gallery in Switzerland, and how he became so passionate about Japanese and East Asian photography. Please remember to follow Subtext and Discourse Art World Podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. Leave a review and share with others who you think would find this interesting. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Christophe Guye. I guess with a lot of gallerists, you don't know much about them. Like, you just know the work they present, you know, their artists and their program, and to the person themselves, there's not really often much shared. And I discovered you were actually a successful advertising executive before you had a gallery. So how does one go from being at the top of their game in their profession and changing to something different?
Yes. So I moved from art to fine art in a way.
Yeah.
I definitely enjoyed my advertising days. It was a great time. It was like the end of the century, you know, the .com companies spending a lot of money in advertising. So I really had a great time. I had a great team. It was fun, but it was also quite exhausting because you have to constantly reinvent something new. Yeah. And so you have to constantly give a lot of your mind, energy, like it's a lot of work. So in a way, it was a bit exhausting on the one hand, and on the other hand, I could see that there was a change in the advertising world.
Oh, okay.
For me, like 9/11 was almost like a turning point where a lot of clients stopped advertising, and it was really like a change in time where I could sense that it won't get back to normal after this event. And so classic advertising became less and less important. And there was more like direct marketing. There was like, it went into online, etc. So in a way, I could sense that. And at that very moment, I got an offer from a big advertising network to buy the company.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I thought it's the perfect timing.
Yeah.
And so I decided to sell it completely. And I knew, so it's going to be another 2, 3, 4 years where I have to be with the company as part of my contract. But at the same time, I knew I need to find another career because it was not enough to settle down.
Yeah.
And so I started to collect art a couple of years before I sold my company, thanks to a close friend of mine who was a famous Swiss artist. It's Gottfried Honecker. And he was a partner of one of my best friend's mother. And so I started to hang out a lot of time with him and his mother. And they, in a way, I mean, this was like maybe 10 years before I sold the company. And so they opened the art world to me. And I started a little bit collecting like minimal art, like concrete, like de l'art concret. And then I started to be more and more involved in art. And so in a way, it culminated at the time of when I sold the company that I decided I wanted to become an art dealer.
Yeah, okay.
And then at one point, I think it was at Art Basel, I ended up in front of a big photograph by Balthasar Burckhardt, famous Swiss photographer. And he was at that time represented by Walter Keller, who was a founder of SCALO publishing house, SCALO Galleries. He was one of the founders of Parquet magazine. He was also involved in the founding of the Photo Museum Winter Tour. And so when I saw this photograph, I knew it has to be photography. And then I started to communicate, to exchange with Walter Keller at that time. And I decided to open up a gallery. And I decided to open up the gallery in Los Angeles because...
Yeah.
I thought I've been in Switzerland all my life. And
so that was the first time you lived abroad as well?
Yeah, either way, yes. So I was like a couple of months here, a couple of months there, but not like really living abroad. And so I thought I have to get out of this country for once in a while. And I did some research where to go. And so I ended up in Los Angeles. And
wow. How was that as a kind of a culture clash between Zurich?
Yes, like everyone in Los Angeles asked me, why on earth are you moving from paradise to this, you know? But for me, it was just extremely fascinating change. And I think it's a lot more difficult to open up any kind of business abroad, and particularly in Los Angeles, although doors flipped open like everywhere I went, which was really, I got really like extremely warm reception by everyone. But on the other hand, it was still pretty difficult to, you know, just, and I never did that before. It was with the help of Walter Keller. Also, the gallery's name was SCALO Guye at that time, and I represented many of great artists that Walter was representing in Switzerland. But still, it was pretty difficult. I mean, like a completely new environment. So I didn't know anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think, I guess, in the context of a gallery, often it is your network and the people that you have around you that you know.
Absolutely. So I didn't know anyone. And I went there with my suitcase. I'd packed for 2 weeks. And so the next day after I arrived, I found a space and I decided to stay. And 5 weeks later, I had my first show.
Wow, really? Yeah. That's amazing. It's like going to Hollywood and opening a gallery.
Right. And it worked out well. I mean, there's a lot of little details where it really worked out well. But as I said, like, people were extremely nice and helpful. Yeah. Like the gallery next door, they shared their address list. I mean, nobody would do that here. Yeah. And someone I met, she also worked in a high-end store, and they somehow managed to get the address list of the Mocha. And so she was also happy to share that with me. And so my first invitation, basically everyone in the art world in LA almost came to my opening, which was amazing. Do
you think being an outsider maybe helped? And everyone was like, wow, there's a guy from Switzerland here.
Yes. Yeah. I think that helped. I mean, I don't know how it is right now, but back then, like it was almost like 16 years ago. As a Swiss, like as a European in general, but then even more so as a Swiss. Yeah. I met like a really interesting crowd in the city. And some of them I'm still in touch even after 15 years.
Yeah, crazy.
So they're not so superficial as they sometimes claim.
And you were there for 4 years?
Yeah, 3 years.
3 years before you came back. Maybe before we say about you moving back, Walter Keller, I think he's quite a significant figure. I think maybe people outside the sort of German-speaking art world or the European art world maybe don't really appreciate how major he was, really.
Yeah, he did a lot to photography. He was really a very interesting character. It was really fun to work with him. I think without his help, I couldn't arrive at what I arrived now.
Yeah, because how much overlap is there from being in advertising to running a gallery?
I mean, there's a lot of marketing. Like running a gallery needs a lot of marketing, but in advertising, there was a lot of photographic-based campaigns. So we worked a lot with also quite famous photographers, and I had to judge photographs. You know, I had to judge before choosing a photographer, and then, the final work and the cropping, and etc. So I felt quite comfortable.
Yeah, I guess your visual literacy was there. Like you could pick things and you knew what was good.
Right. So that really helped. Like I think I developed a good eye on photography, so that really helped. But basically, I always say what I do now is I'm just sharing my passion. So whatever I'm passionate about, I'd like to share to my collectors and to the world, basically. And so it was completely new. So I remember I had like this, every week I sent a list of like beginners questions. I mean, running a gallery is not rocket science, but still there's a lot of,
there's nuance.
Nuances, exactly. So probably every Friday there was this beginners questions number 7.
Yeah.
And I sent a list of questions to Walter. How do you do this? How do you respond to that? What's the best way to do this? And et cetera, et cetera. And so he was like really like very...
Oh, he was your mentor, really? Then,
he was my mentor, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
He was very nice and helpful to answer all these questions, You need to have the time and...
well, just to be willing to share, to be open.
The willingness to share all this information.
Yeah, no,
that was really cool. But then he got bankrupt.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
like 3 months after I arrived in Los Angeles, he got bankrupt.
Oh gosh, okay.
Yeah, so he basically went out of business, and so I had to ship all my art back to Zurich.
Oh, so that was the catalyst for coming home.
So that's when I was like. There's this expression in German, wenn man ins kalte Wasser geschubst wird. Yeah.
Okay, you learn how to swim quickly, yeah.
Pretty quick.
Yeah.
So I had to come up with my own program and everything. So I had to learn it like really fast.
Really fast, yeah. I mean, I guess you would have still been able to... So that's really when you then made the shift to make it your space, Christophe Guye, rather than SCALO.
Well, I changed the name when
you came here.
Came back to Zurich, yeah.
Yeah. Like you have a lot of kind of name artists that people would have heard. Like you represent Roger Barlin, Miles Aldridge, Nick Knight. But you also have quite a lot of Japanese, South Korean, and a lot of East Asian artists as well. Like, was that always the case? Did you have them from the beginning?
No, not from the beginning. I mean, I work with some Japanese artists for more than 10 years, but it was not from the very beginning. And I can say now that one of the focuses of the gallery is Japanese and Korean art. It just developed into this, again, by just going after my passion and what I really like. And in the beginning, I couldn't even really explain what like this Japanese photographer, why it is so compelling. Their art is so compelling and why I'm so drawn to it. And it actually took a few years for me to be able to explain, and it's still difficult to explain why. I think the main, what makes it very special, it has a lot of different levels in their art. It starts with, there's a lot of spirituality. There's a great admiration of history, heritage. Like there's always like almost like a reference to great Japanese masters.
Okay.
But also the incredible eye for design and for details and for the little beautiful things in life. But also they went like completely different ways, like the Provoke area in the 60s where this Aribure bokeh, like all blurry and out of focus and stuff. When the whole world was trying to have this perfect color image, they went completely different way. And there's so many things that you can discover. There's even things you don't even know because you don't know the whole tradition. The tradition, that was the word I was looking for, and all these spiritual details. You don't even know them because you don't know all the whole what's behind all this but in a way you can feel it when you look at the image. And a lot of, I've seen sometimes that Western photographers try to imitate the look of these images, but they cannot get close to it because it misses all the, all this spirituality. It misses the tradition. It misses the respect for tradition and for former photographers, etc., etc.
Yeah, wow. Okay,
that's all inside these images, and that makes it really, really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's a much richer experience, like seeing the images and really appreciating them, because there's a different process behind it, rather than I want to copy what that is and make it look the same. You could say that it's almost hollow in a way, like it doesn't have the same substance behind it.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why I'm really drawn to it, and I'm really looking forward. We have a lot of Japanese photographer exhibitions coming up. I mean, we will have a big Rinko Kawuchi retrospective at the gallery. We're also working on an Araki exhibition. We will have Risaku Suzuki at Paris Photo in November. So there's again a lot coming up.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
Have you been, or do you go?
Yeah,
to Japan?
I've been twice to Tokyo and once to Kyoto, and I'd love to go there every year. I mean, and there's a big Rinko Kawuchi show in Tokyo in October, and I hopefully can make it there.
Yeah,
it's very fascinating. It's a very fascinating country.
How is it for you then, as a dealer or a gallerist, presenting this kind of work in this context? Because I know I learnt quite quickly, showing Australian art in Germany, that there is a different aesthetic expectation. And like we have probably like what you saw in the US, we have a lot of big, colourful, very vibrant works. And particularly in Germany or in the northern part, they're more used to the sort of minimal, subdued, serious art.
Right.
And I guess coming to the industry or to the art world new, that was a learning curve for me. That like everybody in different areas, obviously when you think about it, have different tastes, but even regionally there's different expectations about it. Showing the kind of photography that you do, particularly that you're quite drawn to the sort of Japanese, Korean, like East Asian style of art. How has it been for audiences here in kind of conservative Switzerland and other parts of Europe that maybe have different expectations of art, but particularly of photography?
It's interesting that Switzerland, I learned that Switzerland or Swiss collectors are very open to international art.
Yeah.
Much more than I've seen it, like for instance in the States, where there's a little bit this saying that Americans buy American, Germans buy German, English buy English.
Yeah.
And it's of course not exactly true, but what Switzerland is definitely, those Swiss collectors are definitely very open to international artists and international art.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, that's something I had to realize. Also, there's a lot of company collections. Of course, a lot of companies buy local artists or from their own country, but there's a lot of company collections or institutional collections. They buy everything. That they're not limited to Swiss artists.
Oh, interesting.
Which is really interesting and which is really great. I don't know, maybe it's a bit the spirit of Switzerland, like the spirit in Switzerland that we have to, we have also, I think almost nobody knows, we have one of the biggest numbers of foreigners living in Switzerland. 25% of the population in Switzerland are foreigners. I think it's the highest number in entire Europe. And, we speak 4 languages. Not everyone, but in the country, there's 4 languages. There's like the French part, the Italian part, the German part. I think we have to get used to deal with not just ourselves, but with other people. I think we are quite open.
Well, do you think maybe, I guess on the topic of Switzerland then, because you have the 4 different cultures under the one umbrella of the same country, that maybe you're more predisposed to being curious because you have to be growing up.
We have to be in a way, and also, it's a small country, and we're dependent on foreign countries, in terms of trade and everything. So we're quite adaptable. We are happy to adapt, and so that's probably also why we're open to new things.
Yeah,
and also to foreign artists.
On that topic of adaptability, we spoke a little bit about it before we started recording. And I guess in particular, the artists you're showing now and some of the younger artists that you're showing, how has it been for you, perhaps, maybe this is a better way of framing the question, that over the 10, 15 years of having the gallery, how has it evolved for you, finding new artists, but then also growing with the collectors or bringing the collectors to new artists? I suppose as we age, we've become more conservative. I don't know if I like new things. How is it for you as a gallerist to stay relevant, but also for your collectors to keep interested in what's coming up around them?
It's a very interesting question, and we spoke a little bit beforehand. As a gallerist, of course, I have my program. I have my artists. I have my great artists who produce great artwork, but then you're in this daily routine. And you show your artists, and they have new works, and then you do another exhibition, and then you show them at art fairs, and then years go by, and suddenly it's 10, 15 years later, And so I suddenly had this thought that if this just continues like that, and you're just getting older, and your collector's getting older, and your artist's getting older, and suddenly they're all dead. And but
I think that's kind of the normal evolution of a gallery to a certain extent.
If you don't pay attention to bring in new artists and look at new talents, and maybe go a little bit away from your usual path, I think it's very important. You see that galleries are going out of business, and then you wonder why. They have been in business for 10, 20 years, and then suddenly they're out of business. I mean, of course, maybe they just don't want to do it anymore, or maybe there's from that they got sick, or maybe they're just tired of doing it. But I think sometimes it's also that just the collectors, and they were just too old and didn't buy anymore. And or maybe the art is not really, I don't want to say trendy, but it doesn't represent what's being desired at the moment. Yeah,
it's difficult to say, are people bored of it, or is it less interesting?
Yeah.
I suppose you sometimes look for new nourishment. And I think with any kind of input that we're receiving, sometimes you're I've had the same thing for quite a while now, and I'm really familiar with it, but what else is there? There must be something different. And I felt a little bit the same with how I'd selected artists. And if I think about the people that I selected at the beginning to the ones that I select now, it's almost I've grown with what I'm looking at and with what's being produced and what's being shown. And it's not to say that it's less interesting. It's just that it was interesting to me when I was then, and now I'm interested in something different. And I imagine with collectors and with most people that are constantly looking for new things that they've not seen before, I want to see something different.
No, absolutely. I totally agree. And it was really interesting with John Guye that we, on the one hand, really gained a lot of new collectors from all over the world, which is really fascinating, from the States to Germany, to England, to here, but also a lot of our previous dear collectors.
Yeah.
They also were purchasing her art, which is in a way really fantastic.
Yeah.
And in a way convincing that I was doing the right thing. Although there were some collectors who said it doesn't resonate with me at all, which is fine. But on the other hand, really great collectors bought pieces which they could see. There's even one particular collector who has a big collection, and he bought this one piece in the window with the QR codes on it. And he's coming from a totally different collecting focus, but he says that's actually the future of what I'm collecting right now.
Wow.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
because that's like the missing link, basically, and he could see that. I mean, he's like really like, I call them super collectors, you know. Just it's a cool word for people who own like thousands of pieces, and that he could see that in this artist. That I thought that was really cool. For me, that was the highlight so far of this new exhibition.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your insights, for your time.
Really, I'd love to speak even much longer with you. Or maybe there's another chance at some other time we can like sort of have part 2 of this talk.
Yeah, that would be really nice.
But today is a bit a busy day, so I have to run to my next appointment.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time, and
it's a great pleasure.
Look forward to the next time.
Me too. Thank you, Michael.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Christophe Guye, hearing the origin story of his gallery and how he stays inspired. You can visit the gallery on Straße 31 in Zurich, Switzerland, which is less than a 5-minute walk from the Zurich Opera House. Otherwise, Christophe Guye Gallery is a regular participant at Photo London and Paris Photo if you're planning on attending either of these art fairs. As always, I've included links in the show notes to various topics we discussed, together with where you can find Christophe Guye on social media. If you have any questions or feedback about this or previous episodes of the podcast, you're more than welcome to get in touch. Subtext and Discourse Art World Podcast is streaming on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every major platform. If you enjoyed this episode and know someone else who would appreciate it too, please send them a link so they can benefit from the insights. That's all for now. Thanks again for tuning in. My name is Michael Dooney, and you've been listening to Subtext and Discourse.